I'm talking with Darren Lang, motivational speaker, author, and trainer. And we're going to dive into stress, the differences between good and bad stress, and becoming more stress resilient. Welcome to the show, Darren.
Yeah, thank you very much, Lisa. Nice to be here.
In your work, you focus on the topic of stress. What led you to a place that you wanted to talk about stress? Tell us about your story.
Yeah, my story is something that I share a lot in my presentations, and I kind of use it in two ways. One, it sort of lets everybody in the room know a little bit about me and how I got to where I am. But I also really like to share my story because I truly think it could be everybody's story. And it's a sort of a story on how mental health from the everyday grind and the busyness and the hectic pace could happen to anybody. And so my story starts back in 2002. And it was a time in our life. My wife is Darcy, and we were married for about 7 years then. And Darcy is a motivational speaker as well. She goes, and her career was going gangbusters. She was going all over Canada, sharing her focus on the 90% message. And we're based out of Regina here, and I was working at SaskTel as a marketing manager. And so we had this busy life here. We had a small business started that we were running out of our house. And we had a 1 and a 3-year-old at home running around in the middle of all this. So it was just a schmoz of a whole lot going on, as you can imagine, Lisa. And so after about 2 years for people who believe in balance, and my wife, who at the time spoke on balance, we weren't very balanced. And so we were quite stressed out, and we decided we needed to change that. And so we thought, let's make a big move. And I was going to quit my good SaskTel government job and kind of become, home base for the kids. As Darcy traveled, we wanted one parent to always be with the kids and home and all this kind of good stuff. And so, as odd as this might sound, this was kind of the beginning of, it was probably the biggest life change I'd ever gone through, leaving my career, being at home. And there was a few things there that I never saw coming. And one of them was, how when you do something for a long time, it kind of becomes part of your role. I'm a marketing manager, or, what do you do sort of thing. I don't think I was quite prepared for leaving that big chunk of who I was behind. Um, it just felt like I was leaving a whole chunk of my purpose behind. And I can't say I really thought about that in great detail before I left that job. The other piece that was really kind of pressing my buttons in that big life change is I went from the hustle and bustle of an office, and I'm a pretty social guy, to suddenly being at home with the kid with the kids. And don't get me wrong, like we love our kids, right? But man, there's something about watching the same Barney video for like the 67th time that kind of gets to you after a while. As though I
Uh-huh.
went from being very socially connected to being almost on the isolated side. Time for the wheels to start kind of turning and all those sorts of things. And the other thing that I found was pressing my buttons is Darcy was out sort of traveling all over Canada. We had this new young family, and we were really close as a married couple before all this started to happen. But I found that we were kind of, how when you have little ones and you have a busy schedule, some of the big things kind of get backburnered. And for Darcy and I found that it was kind of time for our marriage, right? We were really good at being a mom and dad to Jada and John, and we were really good at being entrepreneurs with our small business. But I truly think we were, the whole marriage, prioritizing our marriage and time for each other was kind of slipping. So when I say to your viewers, this could be anybody's story. This is life stuff, right? It's stuff that we all go through. And I found that one of the big mistakes that I made in the middle of this big life change was I was feeling off. I feel like my buttons were being pressed, but I wasn't doing a damn thing about it. I was sitting in the middle of that and I was complaining and moaning and being a victim, basically. And as I look back, Lisa, it probably took about, I want to say 10 months, maybe a year. And I could just feel myself. We're going to talk about the down spiral later. I could feel myself getting caught in that down spiral. And I was very crusty and ornery and cranky. And Darcy's taking this all in. And she says, Darren, we got to do something. This is not you. Let's get away somewhere. Let's go to a place, where let's go somewhere we always wanted to go. She suggests let's go to Hawaii. So I'm thinking this sounds amazing. Okay, we'll get away. I'm a big adventure guy. We'll connect as a couple, get some couple time with family. We jet off to this place that I'd always wanted to go, and Waikiki in Hawaii. And I'll never forget it. Because as we drove along in Waikiki, we pulled onto the main strip in Waikiki, Kalkaua Boulevard. And I remember Darcy and the kids were so excited. We're driving past palm trees and the oceans and all the shoe stores that my wife is a huge fan of, and all the restaurants. And they were so excited. And as we drove along, it was almost like I suddenly realized that I had all the stuff around me that I loved. And inside, I felt nothing. I felt like there was a weird disconnect between what Darcy and the kids were experiencing and what I was experiencing. And it's weird, in that vacation, I must have walked up and down Waikiki Beach 20 times in the 2 weeks that we were there, trying to feel this excitement. And I never felt it. I didn't feel like it wasn't coming. And it's the weirdest. It was the first time in my life where I would say that stress, and we all go through stress, right? I wasn't rebounding from the stress. And so what I learned from that experience is that I was dealing with mental health. My stress had slid into kind of the anxiety and depression that is unfortunately not uncommon these days. And so, in answer to your question, that's kind of my story and how I started talking about this. Because when I was diagnosed with, Darren, you're dealing with mental health and anxiety and depression, and I'd never dealt with that stuff before. And so the one thing I was very proactive is learning about this and figuring out how to get better. And so that's what's brought me to a 22-year career in talking about stress and mental health, is everything I learned along the way, basically.
That is such a relatable story. And I don't mean to minimize your experience at all, but being home with little kids and actually when you were talking about walking down the beach and not feeling the excitement, that's exactly what I can relate to
Yeah.
in parts of my mental health experience as well. And it's kind of undescribable until you've been in that situation, but I
Yeah,
hear you.
that's a really good way to say it, Lisa, because I'd never experienced it before. It's not like I had a history of this, but it's like the right sort of life circumstances. And again, it, wa- it wasn't life-shattering circumstances or anything like that, but it was a big change. It was my change, and it was the fact that I wasn't relating well in the middle of that, and it just kind of kept depleting. So